Jury ruling in favor of rideshare company Uber in a first-of-its-kind trial. A California jury ruled that Uber was not liable for the alleged sexual assault of a woman who claimed that the driver that she had ordered attacked her. That woman sued the rideshare company in 2021 after claiming that driver assaulted her back in 2016. The lawsuit claimed that Uber tracked and withheld data from the public of how many assaults their drivers were involved in. The lawsuit says that Uber was aware of the issue and didn't take any action to address it. Uber, though, argued that it shouldn't be responsible for drivers' criminal actions and says its background checks and information about assaults were adequate. Now, there's also a similar battle going on in North Carolina between customers and the rideshare company. So we're bringing in Chief Legal Analyst Colleen Rhodes to talk about first this case out of California. What do you make of the ruling here?
This is ripped right out of the pages of law school exams when you're in these type of tort cases in civil procedure, trying to figure out the process. A term of art that they bring up in law school is called respondeat superior, and it's Latin for let the employer stand, let the owner stand in place, right? And so basically it says if an employee, while in the course of their action or employment, does something to the benefit of their employer, then the employer should be held responsible for the employee's action. So there's key words there, and this is exactly what this court said. First of all, is this an employee? Uber would argue that these drivers are independent contractors. They're not employees. That's the first argument. Most of the time, the court doesn't have to address that argument because they can skip and bypass that and go to the second portion of the question, which is, were they in the course of employment and was it for the benefit within the scope of their employment? So yes, they're driving, but was it for the benefit of their employer? That's always going to be the key. In this scenario right here, I would assure you, if I'm representing Uber, I'm going to ask someone to turn to the employee manual. Please turn to the page that talks about sexual assault. And I can guarantee they won't be able to point there. So now on the other side, plaintiffs are going to say, well, you failed to put processes in place to reasonably detect individuals that you knew or should have known could have done these things. That's the only response that you can have, because you failed to react, failed to look for these red flags and see that, hey, if you would have checked their background, you would have solved this individual had numerous assaults in the past. If that's the argument, how come you hired this individual? How come you allowed them to now put my client at risk of being, harmed? That's the only argument they can do. But every employer is going to argue respondeat superior, is that you guys cannot get to me because these actions were outside the scope. We don't have any, programs that dictate and tell and instruct you how to do the actions that this guy was, accused of doing. Definitely terrible situation, something that the individual should never have went through, but connecting the employer to the employee's negligent or intentional wrongful acts is extremely hard to do.
Well, and they argue that they do have background checks and that those were adequate because they can't predict future actions, right? If they haven't been reported in the past, right?
Well, I mean, and that's kind of like a misnomer to say they can't predict. It's just like when people talk about releasing individuals with the criminal justice system for pretrial release. Your past is an indicator. It is a very telling indicator of what could potentially happen in the future. If I have a person that has a lengthy history in multiple times of the same type of charge, that's an indicator that it could potentially happen again, or it could potentially escalate. So yes, your past, that's why we run background checks.
Right.
That's why if I have a person that's dealing with money, I'm not going to hire the person that had multiple fraud accounts in their background. You would look for those types of things and say, that's a red flag. Do I think there's a job out there for you, but maybe not this job? In that same scenario, it's if you've had some sexual assaults, do I have a reasonable responsibility to ensure that the rider isn't put in a situation with a person that may have a higher propensity to do something to them? So yes, I think that is a great argument. I just think it's hard to trump that respondeat superior because it's outside the scope. It's extremely hard to jump over that hurdle.
So setting a precedent for a case that's going on here in North Carolina as well?
Yes, I think these are these type of bellwether cases where you got thousands of cases, and this is great as an attorney. It's kind of the gift and the curse because you have an opportunity to set the ceiling, but you also have an opportunity to set the floor. And so if you could get a great settlement, wow, the ceiling is, $100 million. Everyone's trying to reach for that. But if you start getting losses and you get cases dismissed, now you're thinking, okay, I got 3,000 of these out there. It's going to cost these law firms millions of dollars to bring these type of claims. And if they're all going to continue to lose, plaintiffs are going to say, I don't want to continue to do this. Most of these things are happening from 2019, 2020. I mean, and they're just getting their day in court. So you can imagine plaintiffs are saying, okay, if I just saw they lost in California, this is not going to bode well from North Carolina, specifically if we have the exact same facts, if we're alleging the same things that they failed to do. Like either we're going to have something new, some smoking gun, some document, something that we can point to. And if you're unable to do that, I can say it, respondeat superior is a high hurdle.
All right, we'll keep an eye on those cases that are coming up and see what happens there, Cully. Thank you.
Queen City News Plus. Just search Queen City News on your smart TV's app store.